Alright guys, welcome back to another Mile High Motorsports Academy car track guide. For those of you guys that are new, I have a community Discord that I run for primarily newer oval racers, but if you're experienced, veteran, anything like that, everyone's welcome. It includes several resources, including reference guides for different aspects of racing, like brake bias, how to practice, league racing, how to save tires, all the kind of things that you'll want to learn as you sort of start your iRacing career in a sense. I will put the Discord link for that at the bottom here. But every week we do a poll of which car track combo guide for the next week's officials they would like to see. So this week we are landing on the ARCA Menards car here at Atlanta Motor Speedway, the super speedway version, since that's what's going to be running officials next week. Or actually think the track's called Echo Park now, but I still think of it as Atlanta. Similar to last week, I'm going to just dive right into the qualifying lap, and then I'll put in another clip of the qualifying lap from the out-of-car view so you can see sort of how I'm positioning my car going into taking the lap. And then following that will be a more detailed guide on, how I'm leaving pit road, getting around the track before I start, the actual hot lap, and then also just some general guidance and tips on super speedway racing, some tips about just driving in Atlanta, and then there might be some other information about the community Discord in there. But overall, this one should be a pretty quick one this week. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. Okay, we ran a 32.168. And that is a lap from the above view at Atlanta Super Speedway. Hopefully this was helpful, guys. And I go through this in every video, but if you want to practice ahead of time for a race, you can just go to the series schedule, click test drive, and that will pretty much mimic the weather and track conditions you're going to have for that week of officials in iRacing. This one will probably be a pretty short video this week. There's not a whole lot to go over at a super speedway race like this. I'll go over, kind of the qualifying line and then maybe some general just track tips, for racing the super speedway here. But overall, it's going to be trying to just keep your speed up, the momentum for qualifying here in the ARCA car, and then as most of you probably already know, and then it just comes down to staying out of trouble in the race. But hopefully, with this little qualifying guide here, you guys can start up front, and usually, the more up front you are, the less chance you get caught up in anybody else's trouble. So, starting off here, you can see the weather and track conditions here in the top left. I went ahead and threw the overlay in there so you guys can kind of see what that looks like. In terms of the car setup, I actually didn't change anything on this. Couple things you can do for super speedway qualifying just in general is a lot of times people will go for a little bit of a higher ratio just to make it so the wheel's not so sensitive, because any little bit of wheel input that you have, that's going to scrub a tiny bit of speed off of the car. So I have seen people do that before, maybe not so important here at a smaller super speedway like Atlanta, but something to keep in mind. The only other thing you can really do, I would say, is you can reduce the force feedback in your wheel too, so it's not so heavy in a sense. So that's another thing that you can do to kind of maybe help gain that last, you know, hundredth or so. All right, well, just jumping right into it. Taking off for your qualifying lap here. You want to make sure you take off slow. You don't want to chirp with the tires at all, spinning them, anything like that. So you can go ahead and get up to speed here nice and easy. It's going to be the second lap anyways, so you don't have to worry so much about firing off pit road really quickly to get to the top speed before you cross the start finish line, because you are going to go ahead and throw away the first lap. I found the second one just to be faster. A couple things here. You do want to run up here near the wall to kind of build some speed. You don't really want to go over the dash line, just because iRacing has a wall arrow type effect that will kind of pull the car back and slow you down. So you definitely don't want to get all the way up to the wall. And I'm basically just going to do the same thing here in 1 and 2 for the first lap. And then we're going to do the same thing in 3 and 4 just to get that momentum off of 4 to take the green for our actual hot lap here. Okay, we ran a 32.168. Hopefully that's a pretty fast lap for this week. I don't really have a whole lot to compare to, but that should put you in a pretty good place. And in talking about kind of what I'm doing here, like I mentioned earlier, you do want to run up here towards this dash line where you want to put your right sides to carry the speed off of 4. And then when you go to start your qualifying lap, you kind of want to be here about the center of the track just so you can let it drop down the hill at the end. Clipping this red, drifting up, and then really just bringing it back down that little extra bit to carry the speed through the corner. Same concept here. You want to let it drift up to about, you know, that dash line where you're basically going to run for 3 and 4 going into the qualifying lap. Then we're going to dip it down, take advantage of that little bit of banking to carry the speed through the corner, and then maybe drift up a little bit here with that seam, cut down, basically clip the grass, and you're going to cut that apron just to get that little extra bit of time, or save that little bit of extra time for your qualifying lap. Okay, looking at the qualifying lap, I think it can be helpful to see it from outside the car too, so I'm going to run it through and kind of talk about what I'm doing with the car and why. While you watch it from this above view camera. And if you want to see the in-car, you know, obviously you can go back to that in the video. Okay, so this is us going in to take our actual hot lap. So you do want to run higher on the track to get that extra speed and momentum as you come off, but don't want to get too close to the wall where you're getting that iRacing arrow effect pulling you back. As you can see there, we're about in the middle of the track to start our hot lap. Then you want to basically aim for this red line on the inside there where you're going to clip it as you come across it. And then we're going to drift up to keep our momentum and then ride the banking down for the corner. And that's just going to give you a little bit more corner speed throughout. You know, you can cut that, but I think it's going to lose you time over the long run as you go through the full corner. And then coming off of the corner here, you really just kind of want to let the car drive itself. You know, keep light hands on the wheel, let it drift up to carry that speed. You don't want to be fighting it, because that's just going to scrub speed. And then as we come into the corner here, same thing, riding that banking down, getting all the way down to the bottom, riding it through the corner, and then as we exit here, drifting up a little bit. There's going to be a seam here you can see, you can kind of follow before we cut down to cut this apron by, really just getting right next to that grass. And I probably could have got even a little bit more over and clipped it, and cutting the apron to save that extra speed. In terms of racing at Atlanta here, in the pack, I think generally it's going to be good to try and run the bottom, mainly because it's going to wear your tires a little bit less, save a little bit more fuel. But really, honestly, I think the biggest thing that I find running the bottom at a super speedway is that it's going to give you an outlet, right? So there's going to be crashes in a track like Atlanta where it is so tight. It's not like Talladega where you have all this space to move. You've got the apron here if you need to dodge a wreck, things like that. And I find it's not as easy to build the momentum like you normally would on the outside, but that's not to say the outside can't work. I'd say typical for super speedways, just sort of how you want to approach them, is obviously you want to qualify well. The farther up in the field you can be, the less chance you're going to be caught up in an accident during the race. And then some sort of tips for sort of moving forward through the race in terms of, gaining track position and things. Don't be afraid to switch lanes. Whatever line seems to be moving the best, because, the pushers at the front are really going to determine how well that line's going to move. Is anybody checking up? Are they managing their temps well when they're doing their pushes so they can be consistent? Things like that. A lot of times you'll find at super speedways where guys that want to move forward will get together on the higher lane. They'll push each other around the outside, and then as soon as one of them, the front one gets clear, they'll drop down so that the car behind them is now the lead car on the outside. They can cool off their car, and then they'll do the same thing, and then just kind of keep dropping down to the bottom as the race goes on. And really outside of that, it's just going to be, like I said, staying clean, know when to be aggressive and not to be aggressive. I kind of take a more conservative approach, I think, to super speedways, in that I'm really not going to be pushing anybody in front of me unless I'm, the third or second car in line. Anything after that really is just going to spell trouble, I think, because you can't see what's in front of you, so you don't know if the cars in front of you are already locked bumpers, and then here you're hitting them, which is going to maybe get them bobbled out to the side and hit the upper lane cars, things like that. And you're really not going to make any kind of headway slamming the guy's bumper when you're running in the sixth row, right? You need to just let the guys at the front sort of manage the lines, and you just do a good job of staying tight so no one can get in front of you, or looking for openings to the outside or the inside, where the runs are at if you do get that space. Okay, a couple other things I actually forgot to mention that I wanted to clip in here is when it comes to managing your temperatures here. So you can tell by the camera angle that I have, I can't see a lot of the dash, which is fine, but you can hit D on your keyboard is the default hotkey to pull up the dash overlay. So it'll tell you your RPMs, your oil, your water. So if you need the RPMs for shifting, because you can't see that screen down there, that's kind of cut off for me. And then even more important is going to be that oil and water temperature. If you are one of the cars up front pushing, you do want to monitor that. The last thing you want to do is blow up your car, obviously, during a race. And something to think about when you are pushing is when you're pushing and how you're doing it, right? So are you pushing through the corners? Are you pushing down the straight? Are you overheating really quickly? Are you overheating slowly? Those are all things you want to keep in mind. Also kind of how many laps are left. So maybe there's 5 laps to go, you're running hot, so maybe you back off a little bit. Or put your car half a car down from the guy in front of you if you can, or half a lane up to try and cool that front end. So that when it does become 1 lap to go or a lap and a half to go, you don't have to worry about your temps are blowing up. You can just push that guy as hard as you can. So kind of timing how well you're managing those temps is going to be crucial when it comes down to the end of a race, right? Another thing to note too is when you are managing or looking at those temps, monitoring them, it's okay to go into the yellow. I wouldn't maybe just sit in the yellow because that's going to overtax the engine. But even more so, you want to stay out of the red. You would think that'd be obvious. You can kind of, flirt with it a little bit, where if you reach the red, you just kind of a note to yourself to back it down a little bit if you need to get to manage those temps back down. The more that you do, push higher into the yellows or go into the red, the more likely you are to blow up the next time you go into the red too. I think a lot of people will think, okay, my car blew up in practice at 300 degrees water temp, right? Well, then you just, you take note of it. Okay, my car blows up at 300. I can go all the way up to 299 and I don't have to worry about it. Well, no, actually, I've learned a hard lesson with that before. It's really going to depend on how often you're hitting that red. The more times you get into it and push that motor, the more likely you are to blow up the next time you get into the red. So that's something to keep in mind, that if you do want to be aggressive with the pushes and your temperatures, to make sure that you keep it, somewhat tame. Or conservative, maybe the first half of the race or first 2/3. And then if you want to start being more aggressive, you can do that more towards the end of the race. So that's just something to keep in mind too, that I think is important, that you don't really learn until you make that mistake. So I did want to throw that in there as well. And that pretty much covers, I think, Atlanta in the ARCA car. Like I said, try and qualify up front. Manage your position, the pace, keep an eye on the fuel if that's going to be an issue for you. And something like this, though, I highly doubt it. And good luck next week, guys. Hopefully this helps, and I will see you in the next one.